Welcome to the December 2020 BET full board meeting for the month. We're obviously still doing this in Zoom, and you'll hear a little more details about that in a minute. I'd like to call the meeting to order if possible. And Karen, can we get a flag for the salute to the flag?
Yes, you can. Hold on. Share screen. There you go.
Not yet. There we are.
There we go. Okay, everyone. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
the United States of America, and to the republic
which it
for which it
stands,
stands, one nation,
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
Okay, everyone. We have a very, very packed meeting, and we're going to have to make a few agenda changes real quick here. I just want to say that this has been quite a week. Obviously, we're 48 hours or a little bit less than that from when the budget committee ended. And with agendas like this, we can't do that again. It's just too much. There's just not enough time in the middle. I want to thank Karen and Leslie Moriarty for helping me get the agenda out. I was tied up with some other BET stuff that's kind of going on, and it was a mad dash. And Shira, Peter, and Roland were fantastic helping get this put together. But we do have some housekeeping I'd like to take care of first if we can. Leslie, Karen, the first item.
Just wanted to make a note that we will be extending the option to hold Zoom meetings through March 31st, 2021, and we'll be offering that at the end of the agenda.
So
And
that'll be
Leslie
to add
has
an
a-
item under new. That'll be to add an item under new business, correct?
Correct.
I'll second that motion to add that item.
Okay. We'll have a discussion on that if we add the item when we get there. Is there everybody in
Yes.
favor of that?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I also want to add an agenda item after the assessor's report to add a discussion item on the tax deferral program. And
I'll second that if you want a motion on it.
Sure, it's okay. Discussion on that? Obviously, I'll give the background. Obviously, last night, as you know, there's a directive came out from the governor's office on another tax deferment program. We got it. Again, I want to thank all the help I had today with all the communications. Our tax collector has been invited to sort of drop in sort of between items 5 and 6 for us to have a discussion on that. And I'm sure our controller will be part of that. So that'll be a sort of a motion to add that in there. So if that motion's been moved and seconded, this other discussion? Okay, do I have everybody in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, that's carried.
I have one other motion, and that is to move the approval of the assessor's office fiscal 22 budget and operations plan to after this new discussion item. If there's a second, I'll explain this just to allow our assessor to complete her work with us earlier in the evening.
Seconded by Mr. Raymer. Discussion, go ahead. Ms. Moriarty, if you would.
No.
It's seconded.
The explanation is just to be able to complete the tax assessor's work with our board earlier in the evening so that she doesn't need to stay for the rest of the meeting if she so chooses.
Okay. For any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. So now we have our modified agenda. I would like to get we have a community development block grant.
Mike?
Yes,
Sorry. Pete can't get in. Could you kind of let him in again the other way?
sure. We'll take care of that. Karen's got that. So we have an item on our agenda tonight, one other little housekeeping, and I need to get a motion to open up a public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant Fiscal 2020 Amendment.
So move.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Raymer. Discussion? I'll explain. We're open to public hearing for any members, and we'll keep an eye out for the attendees who may wish to speak. The item is one of our applications, and what I will also be asking is on our item 4 is that we postpone the vote on CD1 until after we've given everybody a chance to speak at the public hearing, and we close the public hearing before we opine on it with our vote, if that's okay with everyone. So,
Sure.
so the public hearing is open, and if anybody who is on our Zoom meeting would like to comment about the CDBG at any time, just raise your hand as an attendee, and we'll keep an eye out for those hands, and we will at the end of any particular item, we'll break back into that for your comments, and we'll ask everyone to keep in our sort of typical fashion comments limited to 3 minutes, and they'll become part of the permanent record, and we'll go from there. I did keep all of our items non-routine because of the shortness between the budget committee and the full BET. And I wanted committee reports on all of those. That's sort of a change we've been sort of adopting on the move here. Mr. Raymer and I have to maybe look at our policy manual because there's some real good merit to having the committee reports. So our non-routine items are from a committee, but we'll take them one at a time. And I'll call on Mr. Drake, the clerk of the board, for our first item.
Bear with me a second. CD1 is our community development appropriation, $386,500, which is approval to use the additional CARES Act funds which we received.
Okay.
Would it be wise to have Tyler, who's over among our participants on this Zoom, kind of set the stage with a short report about the process?
Sure. The item has been moved, and it's coming from our budget committee. I was going to call on committee reports. We have 2 committees. We have our 2 CDBG members for a report, and we have our budget committee report. And yes, at any time we can, if we have questions, we can call on our CDBG rep to answer questions for us. So with that, CDBG is Mr. Weisbrod and
It's me and Mr. Weisbrod. Maybe I'll make a sentence and David can help me, but my brief sentence would be, we got additional funds from the CDBG program and we ran a typical process that we always run, and it all went cooperatively, and Tyler can provide more detail.
Yeah, I would only add enormous gratitude for the work of Alexis and Tyler. I've now been through this process a number of times, and the commitment and professionalism that both Alexis and Tyler bring to the whole process, engaging the community as they have, is exemplary. And I wanted to just make that comment. I'm happy also that our first selectman has approved every one of the recommendations made by the committee process. And so it's really working quite smoothly. Thank you.
thank you. Does any member have any questions for Tyler? Tyler, do you have anything you'd like to add for, seeing this is a public hearing and it's our full BET? Do you have any comments or anything? If not, we can entertain questions.
Yeah, I think Mr. Drake and Mr. Weisbrod distilled it pretty well, and I'd like to thank both of them for their help with the advisory committee. It's certainly good to have some perspective from the BET, as well as added to that of our RTM members and our board members. Just in short, we were notified in late September, I think September 29th, that we'd received an additional allocation of COVID funding through CDBG. This is not anything that we have to apply for. It's an entitlement, just like the rest of the CDBG funds that we get on an annual basis. So the BET approved our 2020 action plan in May, and then the RTM approved it in June. We found out we got this in September, so we have to do what HUD calls a substantial amendment. So we did a quick process. It's similar to our normal process. We had 3 weeks for people to apply. We had 21 unique applications, and the advisory committee hosted a public hearing on December 2nd. And then the first selectman had one on December 9th to get public input. And the result was the numbers that were forwarded to you that should be in the meeting materials. I just, two quick notes. I noticed in the agenda, On the first page for today, it says the amount is 386,500. That amount should be 386,590. And in the actual resolution itself, which is, I believe, page 5 of the materials for tonight, I inadvertently put a period between the 386 and the 590 instead of a comma at the bottom of the first of 2 pages for a resolution. So those are just 2 minor things I thought might be worth mentioning.
So that grammatical error cost you $90,000. No, just kidding. Can I get an adoption from the members that,
Mike, Alexis Vulgaris has her hand raised.
okay, I'll be right there, but can I get a motion to make that correction on our agenda?
I'll move the 2 corrections, the correction in the resolution and the one on the agenda.
Okay,
Seconded by me.
okay, thank you. So that's a motion to amend the item. I can call for a vote. All those in favor of those 2 amendments?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Thank you. Again, Tyler, I thank you. I'll see if our members have any questions. The chair of the CDBG for the representative town meeting and moderator pro tem has her hand up, although we normally don't have this, but this is a public hearing, so I'll bring.
And Mike, Jeff has his hands up too. I don't know if you want to take him before Alexis.
I will. I'll get right to Jeff next.
And also the committee report needs to be done at some point in time too, budget committee.
I promise I'll get to
Okay.
it. I promise.
Okay.
Let's
Just want to make sure.
let's see if one steering wheel runs one car. Ms. Vulgaris, before I get to I'd like to get to the committee report before I get to you. Can you hang with us for a minute?
I'd be happy to hang with you.
Okay, so that was our CDBG report, and coming from our budget committee, Ms. Tarkington?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fairbairn explained that the original block grant funds were approved in August and that this was an additional allocation of CARES Act funding for preparing for and responding to COVID-19 emergencies. He's held a public hearing, I guess, with the first selectman. The CDBG advisory committee has met, and they've approved the funding distribution to ensure no duplication of services funded from other sources. And the budget committee voted 4-0-0 to accept the additional CARES Act funds of $386,590 and recommend it to the full BET as a routine application, and that motion carried.
Thank you very much. Mr. Raymer, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it's sort of a technical question for Tyler. I don't know the answer to it. It was a question that Laura Erickson had raised at the budget committee as well. I wonder if you could help me with this. Each year when we receive these recommended appropriations, we approve the list of sums that are going and the list of the recipients of each sum. In this case, the recipients are receiving $317,058, and that's because there's some funds returned, as you said, from Abilis. I'm thinking that the actual approval from the BET ought to be the approval of the appropriation of all $417,058, not just the $386,590. And the list before us on page 11, I guess, of our package lists each of the recipients of those sums.
It's a great question, and that it may be one that is better answered by Peter Rowland. The reason I included that was just for transparency, and in that, that was the entire amount that we've awarded to agencies this time. The $30,468 that Abilis returned was already approved. So, under normal circumstances, if we weren't doing this additional round of the CV funds, that is, the 30,000 is what for us in HUD language would not trigger an amendment. So we wouldn't have had to bring this before the BT or the RTM just because of the dollar amount.
So maybe I'm mistaken, but yes, it was approved in May. It was approved as dollars going to Abilis, and now those dollars are going to somebody else. Shouldn't we as a BET be approving the dollars going to the somebody else, which it would be easily done with a resolution that in fact is the one before us. The only thing that's on my mind is the agenda says we're approving that the BET is hereby approving 386,590. I think the BET is hereby approving 417,058. But again, maybe I have it all wrong, Tyler.
No, it makes sense to me. I would maybe defer to Pete or Roland. I don't, it's. I mean, you're absolutely right that it's money that was previously approved, but it is money that is not going to be used differently than what it was previously approved for. I mean, it will also be used for coronavirus response, just by a different agency.
Right. No, I got it. So I'm content to take the advice of Roland or Peter too.
Roland? You're muted, Roland, I believe.
I don't think this changes the appropriation that Tyler's asking for. So I think it's okay the way it is.
Okay. If you're satisfied, so am I.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Raymer. Ms. Fulgaris?
So I want to thank you for letting me have a few minutes to tell you a little bit about block grant. First of all, I'd like to thank Tyler. I'd like to thank Mr. Weisbrod, and I'd like to thank Mr. Drake, as well as the rest of the committee for all their hard work. We had a very truncated process. We met back to back. One day we had the public hearing, and the second night we sort of hashed it all out. And I just wanted to clarify one thing. We had 21 applications, one was withdrawn, so that left us with 20, and we ended up funding or recommending for funding 17 grants. The 3 that were not awarded money, 2 of them were large capital programs. And the feeling is that we are going to quickly reconvene in February and start this process again, and that those agencies could easily drop into the regular funding stream and likely have a good chance of getting funding for their programs. The other thing to keep in mind is normally when we are in the regular funding cycle, programs are only eligible for 15% of the total allocation. So if you use this as an example, if we had $417,000, we can only use 15%. That would have only given programs $62,000 to work with. So this was really an opportunity, because it was unrestricted, to pour the majority of the money into programs, grants for specific programs, things that are normally only getting $5,000 or $7,500 in our regular cycle have now ballooned. They could get $30,000, $35,000, $45,000. So it was a really good way of pushing money to organizations for programs that, had they come back in the regular cycle, they probably would have been left out. So we're very happy that the first selectman left our recommendations untouched. And we look forward to the BET also supporting us, and hopefully the RTM will be just as enthusiastic in January. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fulgaris. Let's see, let me just make sure why we're on the public hearing. I see no other hands up. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, if there are no other questions, I'll call for the vote on this when we close the public hearing, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, continuing down our agenda brings us to Mr. Drake. That brings us to our next item.
The next item is ED6 from the Board of Education, $1,477,000, which is an appropriation of capital funds for Coscow schools.
Okay, that's on behalf of our budget committee. Committee reports, Ms. Tarkington, just trying to find you on the screen there.
ED6.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can I ask a question before I proceed?
Certainly.
Well, I'd be happy. I just want to was ED5 withdrawn? Do we need to review ED5?
ED5 was a transfer. wasn't it?
Oh, we don't, that's right. You're right. You're correct. I
The
apologize.
authority for the Board of Ed transfers.
Right,
lies
right,
with
right,
the
right.
Budget Committee.
I apologize. I just was, okay, ED6, I apologize. Mr. O'Keefe requested that $1,477,000 of the $3,546,000 allocation in the 15-year capital plan to replace the HVAC equipment at Coscob School be approved. Mr. Watson commented that the request was timely because demand for air filtration equipment was strong. An RFP, including the design build process, was issued in November so that the equipment could be installed during the next summer. This is a time-sensitive project, and the RFP should ensure pricing is competitive. The new equipment is designed to be compatible with the school's building management systems currently used in 50% of the town's schools buildings. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the additional capital appropriation for $1,477,000. This was, approved as a non-routine application, and the motion carried.
Thank you. Discussion on the item? Mr. Drake, can we get a roll call vote?
Yes, this is ED6. I'll start with Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crummett,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Starkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fasiotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. That brings us to our next item, Mr. Drake. Can you get our next item moved
Yes,
before?
the next item is FI3, which is the bonding resolution authorizing $1,477,000 of borrowings to finance the Coscob Elementary School HVAC project.
And this is coming from, again, from our Budget Committee. Ms. Tarkington? Budget Committee
Yes.
report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The committee discussed whether the financing of a $1,477,000 HVAC system for Coscob Elementary School should come from the capital non-recurring fund, general fund, or bonding. Mr. Minarski noted that the capital non-recurring fund balance was $8.9 million, of which $3 million was already reserved for reducing the mill rate in the fiscal year 22 budget, and suggested bonding to ensure that a sufficient amount was available if needed during the February budget departmental hearings. He explained that because it was too late to be included in the fiscal year 22 bonding resolution, if there were a change of mind, the option of using the capital non-recurring fund would still be available in the spring. The committee decided to discuss clarification of project bonding policy during its February departmental hearings. The budget committee voted 3-1-0 to approve funding the BOE request for the HVAC system by bonding the amount of $1,477,000 and recommend the application to the full BET as a non-routine application. That motion carried.
Thank you, Ms. Tarkington. Discussion on the item? When we get into these discussion items, I thank you, Laura, very much. If we can go back to hands, Ms. Erickson, your hand was up first.
I just wanted to clarify something that Ms. Tarkington just said. I think she said it was too late for the FY22 budget, but I think you meant the 21 budget, and that it would be part of the January 22 bonding resolution. That was my understanding.
I agree that that's accurate.
Right. Well, I think it was the bonding for the bonding that would be done. You're correct. The date is correct.
Thank you.
In January of 22, not January of 21.
It would have to be done in January 22. It's too late for January 21.
Thank you.
Ms. Hess?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm not going to support this. We had a similar motion in the last meeting or so. I don't think that we should be financing in between our major financings, especially this one won't even go into a bonding resolution until fiscal year 22. We don't know yet how much money for capital projects will get closed out and will result in money increasing our capital non-recurring funds. So generally speaking, there are times where we should consider potentially doing financing during the year, depending on the magnitude of it. But I would think, given the size of this, that I don't think it's material enough to be approving, and I will vote against it.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about the magnitude of this investment. If we move ahead with the recommendation that's in the guidelines is to use 3 million of our 8.9 million capital non-recurring for balancing the budget, that leaves 5.9 million remaining, which would mean this 1.4 million is 20% of the amount of outstanding balance. I think this board is going to be in a better position to understand what level we need to keep in that capital non-recurring when we look at both the capital and financing requirements that are coming forward to us in a month from now, and we understand and have a discussion about what level we need to keep in that account. I think we have much more ability to make changes to that level. If we bond this project now, we can always choose to bond fewer projects in the budget if we want to use more of our capital fund balance. So I would support this bonding authorization.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Before I call for the vote, I'd like to make a quick comment on this. We're going to touch on this a little bit in the controller's report. One of the ideas that came out of last term, and I'm supportive of, and we're actually going to touch on this a couple times tonight, is the BET typically, again, you've just heard, I agree with what everybody's saying, but you just heard we're not going to really finance this until we go to market in January of 22. Between now and then, we're going to have our typical June for the budget committee members, what we call our year-end closeout on capital, where we see a certain amount of capital projects get retired, closed out, and the surplus reverts back to either the general fund or the capital non-recurring fund. And with that said, we've been looking for a better process for capital project closeout for our information, for the BET to know when these projects are closing out, how much was surplus, how the project went, timelines, et cetera, et cetera. This is our second interim borrowing request in the middle of the budget. And I agree with the fact that I'd like to do our town financing plan once a year. And even when we talk about our debt policy and our fund balance policy, you might hear me touch on this later. I will not be I'm supportive of the project. There's no doubt. I think the project is under great management right now, and it's much lower than the original estimates. But I would rather not support the bonding resolution at this point. Ms. Moriarty. Ms. Moriarty,
I just want to clarify our one thing that you just said in your comments. You indicated that when we close out projects at the end of the year, the residual amounts going to the general fund or the capital non-recurring. If it is a bonded project, of which the majority of our projects are now bonded, that just goes to reduce the bonding authorization. No funds return to capital non-recurring. So we have few. So when we talk about closing out projects, there aren't that many projects now that will alter the balance of that capital non-recurring account. Thank you.
Ms. Tarkington, your hand is up.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to add, just for clarification here, if this project were in the fiscal 21 budget, it would have been bonded. If it is in the fiscal 22 budget, it would be bonded. But just looking at fiscal 21 itself, there are only 6 projects of the 97 projects that were approved by this board that are larger than this project. And there are 91 projects smaller. So in terms of size, it is the type of significant project that we would normally bond for, whether it was in fiscal 21 or fiscal 22. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Drake, we need a recorded vote on this. We need 7 members to vote in favor of this resolution for it to pass as per town charter. This is one of our special requirements.
Yep.
So if you would, Mr. Drake.
Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
No.
Ms. Crummy,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
No.
I'm a no. Ms. Vasiliotis,
No.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce.
No.
That was yes.
No.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses and 5 nos. That passes.
That motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Let me just turn the page here on my agenda. Mr. Drake, our next item.
The next item is FI4 in the Finance Department, $18,000, which is a transfer for technology supply.
That comes from our own Finance Department and our Budget Committee. Ms. Tarkington, Budget Committee report, please.
Yes. Mr. Mason explained that the application was the result of a survey of BET members for either upgrading current iPads as needed or replacing all 12 BET members' laptops simultaneously. He noted that the new iPad would have upgraded cybersecurity among its features. The committee discussed how 12 new iPads would be funded, or 12 to 18, whatever it would be funded if the application for the transfer did not pass. Mr. Minarski suggested that funding could be available from unspent consulting funds. Since a fuller discussion could take place at the BET meeting, the committee proceeded to vote, and the committee voted 3-0-1 to transfer $18,000 to purchase new BET iPads simultaneously and recommend the application to the full BET as a non-routine application, and that motion carried.
Thank you. Discussion on the transfer? I would just like to point out that our between everything, between our cyber, everything that's going on, our iPads are in the Zoom meetings, and some people have been complaining about batteries, and we have some cracked screens out there. We've gotten a fairly good life out of them. I think what our decision is, well, at least Mr. Raymer's and I's decision, I think the decision is we're going to not replace them in their entirety. We're going to replace them on an as-needed basis. I think we have at least 3 right now. And there's been some dialogue I've had with town IT, and they're very helpful and very appreciated. So this transfer is internal. I don't think we're going to be spending all of that unless we have more iPads fall offline. So that, just to clarify that, but so that's where that is. So further discussion? Do we need a roll call vote on this? This is a.
Is there any opposition to unanimous consent? Hearing none.
There we go.
Let's mark that as unanimous. The next item is GM1 from GEMS, $2,350,000, which is a release of conditions on their second half payment for this fiscal year.
And that's coming from our Budget Committee. So we'll get committee reports. Ms. Tarkington, on behalf of the Budget Committee.
Yes, Ms. Streetinger, the GEMS director, presented an overview of GEMS year-to-date performance and finances. She commented that call volume was down, patient revenue had been volatile due to COVID-19 hospitalization fears, lack of standby events, per diem, and overtime expense reduction grant pursuant initiatives, and the COVID-19 Small Business Loan Forgiveness Program. GEMS continued its community engagement program for education, volunteer participation, and seasonal activity, such as its Santa Claus ambulance visits. The committee expressed thanks for GEMS' quality of care, financial performance, and fiscal prudence. The committee considered whether reducing of the amount to be released should be considered, given that its expenses are like and the revenues also are lower than budgeted, and that unlike town departments would not be returning excess funds at year end, and the intent of the town's funding is to ensure that expenses are covered. Mr. Mason suggested that the town had a contractual obligation to fulfill the full payment by releasing the full amount of the funds. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the release of the second half of the town contribution to GEMS of $2,350,000 and recommended to the BET as a routine application. That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the item. I see no hands.
Is there any objection to treating that as a unanimous consent?
I think given the size of it, of the item, I think it would be appropriate to take a roll call vote.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Drake?
As you wish. We're voting on GM1. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crummey,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fasciotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Drake?
Next item is HS1 from Human Services, $50,000, which is an approval to use funds for rent.
Okay, that's coming again from our budget committee. Ms. Tarkington, can we get a committee report?
Yes, Commissioner Demetria Nelson explained that the department had been awarded $50,000 as a grant for rent supplementation from the Community Development Block Grant in June, and requested approval to use the grant and together with a corresponding appropriation. The department will return at a later date for approval to use CDBG supplemental funding through the CARES Act that was just discussed earlier in this meeting. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the use of the grant award of $50,000 and recommended to the full BET as a routine application, and that motion carried.
Thank you. Discussion on the item?
Mike, I just wanted to note that Commissioner Nelson is listening in tonight. She wasn't prepared to speak, but I didn't know whether you wanted to give her the opportunity. I had contacted her prior to this meeting and she said she would just listen in, not necessarily speaking, but I don't know whether you want to give her the opportunity.
If she's if there's a comment she has on it, we welcome it. I was going to make a comment that I thought the budget committee and the new commissioner had a tremendously positive dialogue there, and I welcome all of our new management when they come in, and I thought it was just a fantastic interchange. I was glad to see it.
Her mic is live, so.
Oh, okay. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to thank everyone for giving the department the opportunity to request for the additional $50,000 that was awarded to us to assist our very vulnerable, most vulnerable clients in Greenwich. And that's really all I want to take the time to do. So thank you very much for hearing me.
No, we appreciate it. Stop making the budget committee members' life so easy. Make them work a little bit more.
Thank you. I will.
Okay, further discussion. Seeing no hands up, do we need a recorded vote, or?
Is there any objection to making that a unanimous consent?
Any opposed?
We heard it, Doug.
Sorry, Mike. I'll mute.
Unanimous consent other than Mr. Raymer's party. Sorry. The next item is NW2 from Nathaniel Witherell, $1,500,000, which is the release of conditions on their contribution from the general fund.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Ms. Tarkington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Nathaniel Witherell Board Chair, Larry Simon, attributed the Nathaniel Witherell recent accomplishments to the new management team. They have a new executive director, chief financial officer, and director of nursing, and to the ongoing support of PKF O'Connor Davies with the complexity of month-end closing procedures and reconciliations created by differences between the town and the Witherell accounting systems. He noted that patient census volatility had a negative impact on revenue, partially offset by higher Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement, the expenses in the federal and state grants, and COVID-19 reimbursements. Mr. Simon highlighted labor and employee healthcare cost increases and retro salary payments as new issues. The current capital project replacement of electrical panels costing approximately $500,000 is considered to be an urgent improvement needed. It was a very positive meeting also, and the committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the release of conditions on the $1,500,000 and recommended to the full BET as a routine application, and that motion carried.
Thank you very much. Discussion. I don't see any hands up. This is a release of conditions. I don't see any hands up. Do we need a recorded vote, or do I have anybody abstaining or against this? Mr. Raymer, you're about to make comment?
And get my dog quiet and then unmute myself. Just here again, seems to me it's an important appropriation. It's sizable. I think it'd be better that we have a recorded vote. It doesn't take very long.
Yeah, we're happy to do that, but what's the difference between unanimous consent and unanimous voting?
I just feel like sometimes it's better that the body one by one speak what their vote is.
That's fine.
Especially when it's a 7-figure item.
That's fine. Mr. Drake?
Ms.
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Krueger,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Kremick,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Fasiotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you.
The next item is PW3 from the Department of Public Works, $200,000, which is a release of conditions on the Greenwich Avenue intersection improvement.
Okay. Let's see. PW3. Ms. Tarkington, on behalf of the Budget Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Commissioner Jim Michael of Public Works explained that the Greenwich Avenue Elm Street intersection project will bump out the sidewalks, add bike racks, bring a sense of place, and will beautify the location with green landscaping and other plants and code upgrades and provide code upgrades for utilities, including lighting and drainage. The cost of the improvements exceeds that being released, and $100,000 of additional funding will come from two other appropriations for ADA and drainage. A member of the committee commented that the original request had been for $200,000 with a project of larger scope that included a design for the Arch Street and Havemeyer intersection. The senior civil engineer and the first selectman commented on how the enhancements were part of the downtown plan, as well as complying with new code and lighting standards could maintain that they could, upon questioning, they maintain a police presence on the Greenwich Avenue, although that was not the intent. The committee voted 3-0-1 to approve the release of $200,000 for the Greenwich Avenue intersection and recommended to the full BET as a routine application, and that motion carried.
Thank you, Ms. Tarkington. Ms. Hess, your hand is up.
You're
Yes,
muted.
hi. No, I know. Sorry. I am in support of the project and the merit of the project. However, I think that we had a short distance between the timing of the budget committee and the full BET. Typically, there's a week. And I think there's been some questions that have come out. And I would like to make a motion that we just postpone this to the next budget meeting, just to have an opportunity to get some of the questions answered. But I want to say that I am supportive of this project and the merits of the project.
So if I may ask you a question, your motion is to postpone this item till our next regular meeting, not budget meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
next regular BET
Okay,
meeting.
do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
I saw a couple seconds. I think I saw Ms. Kremick. I think I saw Ms. Fasalonis.
I'll yield to Beth. That's okay.
That's okay. I just, for the minutes. Okay, so we have a motion to postpone this item till our next meeting. That motion, discussion on the motion to postpone. Ms. Hess.
I think I said, I believe in the merits of the project. I just didn't have enough time to get some of the questions that I had answered between the budget committee and tonight. I'm confident they'll be fully addressed, and I just think it would make sense if we could push this out to the next meeting. I had a very brief conversation. I don't think it'll totally hold up what they're trying to do. And so I think it would be more prudent just to give us a little extra time.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on a motion to postpone the item for a month? Well, I'd like to add, first of all, the first selectman was to be here to answer some of the questions that had popped up since the budget committee, but I think there's a tragedy in Riverside that he is at right now with a fire and some bad news. So he's not here with us. I also would like to say I'll support this motion to postpone this till next month. I don't think it caused anything. I too am fully in support of the project. I think some questions came up about whether it was one intersection or two. I think some of them were answered, and I want to be fair to the budget committee members because they really dove into this, but I see no harm. I also, after the budget committee, before these questions came up, I also told our town official, Mr. Michael, that, you know, we weren't going to be needing him. And I know he's on the call, but I think that's unfair to pop the questions on him. That's what we have our committee structure for. So if that's okay with everybody, you know, I support that. Ms. Crumick, your hand is up, followed by Ms. Cruiser.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the reason I'm willing to support this motion is because we certainly have had a number of residents in the community that live near that intersection reach out to us. And I think we need more time to really review what's been raised. So I'm all for a little bit more time. Thank you.
No, thank you. Ms. Cruiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also supportive of this. I don't see the downside in waiting another month. And while Mr. Michael may not be ready to answer any substantive questions, I guess the only to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T is just to hear whether there is any risk to a delay. Is there something that we are just inadvertently doing by putting this off another month? And it would just, I personally would love to hear from the person who is one of the people responsible for this.
Let me see if I can, is he still with us, Ms. Faslotis?
Yes.
I don't see.
He's raised his hand.
No, I see Ms. Erickson's hand is up. Let me look under it. Oh,
Attendees.
I'm sorry. There we go. If I may, Ms. Erickson, can I get to Mr. Michael before you? Thank you very much. Mr. Michael?
Yes, thank you, everyone. The only delay that I would see in postponing it is would be for the possibility of securing the contractor and getting materials in place so that our goal was to try and get this project completed prior to the summer period time. So we were looking for an early spring as soon as all that white stuff that came down in the last 24 hours goes away, trying to get this project done prior to Memorial Day. So that's the downside I see in it. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
No, thank you very much. With the amount of snow we got, you could build a bridge. Okay, let me go back to my panelists. Ms. Erickson?
Yeah, I will also support the motion to postpone for a month, although I will say that I think that the project as designed by our DPW civil engineers is attractive and would be an improvement to Greenwich Ave. I think we've had some emails recently from particularly members in RTM District 1, and I want to acknowledge their outreach and I thank them for their input. And I think we need a little more time to assess how will these intersections work? You know, police officers on the avenue, what are the issues we're talking about, which is, you know, a policy issue really. So I do support postponing for a month, but I hope we engage in some dialogue to sort of address those bigger picture issues, which isn't necessarily a BET issue. I think it's more for selectmen and some RTM members. Need more clarity.
You, if I may, you bring up a very good point. Who's our DPW liaisons?
Leslie and myself. Leslie Tarkington and myself.
Can I offer this as a task for you to kind of, you know, get some answers just for everybody who's watching? I think, and I read the emails from the residents too. This was an item approved, if maybe I have it a little off. This is an item approved in the budget with a subject to release for the various approvals and what have you. It did call for 2 projects, and I think there's some questions about the amount. Or was the amount to be split between 2? Here nor there. I'll get the clarification I need on that. But I think it's important we follow up and we want to. Obviously, we don't want to cause a delay if there doesn't need to be. But on the other hand, really what was before us is just releasing a condition. The money's actually appropriated already. And I'm sympathetic to the emails, and I want to get some more answers for this too. So I'm happy we're finding some agreement on just a temporary pause on this. Further, I see no hands up. Mr. Drake, this is a motion to postpone, let me get this right, PW3 till the next BET meeting.
Yes, and
So can we have a record vote on that?
You mean next regular BET meeting, just in case there's any.
Mr. Raymer, help me. If we were to have a special meeting and we were ready to go on that, I would have no problem with that. It would be the next BET meeting, or it could be the next regular scheduled BET meeting.
Yeah, but I think the motion should be couched to say that you're putting it over to the next meeting, which is the 25th of January. That, under Robert's rules, places it on the agenda. Whereas if you just have postponement without having a specific date, it has an entirely different effect. It's entirely within the chair's discretion, however, to have to include this as an item on some special meeting that may take prior to that.
Thank you. You may just get your new iPad. Okay, Mr. Drake.
We're going to start at the other end of the table, even though we don't have a table. Ms. Erickson,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Ms. Fosliotis,
Mute.
You're still muted.
Ms.
Sorry,
Fosliotis.
I lost you guys. I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm a no. Mr. Mason,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Kroick,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Cruiser.
Yes.
That was 11-1. It passes.
Thank you, Mr. Drake.
The next item is TA1 from TAG, which is for $139,500, the release of conditions on contribution to TAG.
Okay, Ms. Tarkington on behalf of the Budget Committee.
Yes, Mr. Mike Miller, TAG's Board of Directors Treasurer, explained the progress TAG was making with a neutral cash flow despite experience due to their clients' COVID-19 shutdowns. As the selected distributor for the Feed Greenwich program in partnership with the town's Department of Human Services, BOE, GPS, and Neighbor to Neighbor, TAG delivered food to elementary and middle school students, as well as the agency's clients. Community development block grants and other grants were additional sources of income. Although TAG's annual fundraiser was canceled due to the pandemic, economies in insurance, office expenses, and employee payroll contributed to its stability. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the release of $139,500 and to recommend it to the full BET as recommend the release to the full BET. The motion carried.
And that was 4-0-0 on behalf of the Budget Committee?
That was a 4-0-0 vote. That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Discussion? I'm not seeing a discussion. Do I have any negative votes on this or abstentions? If not, can we?
It sounded like unanimous consent.
Thank you. I would say, looking back, this body and TAG have really done a lot working together, and I think we should all be proud of TAG's continuing on and the things they're doing right now, and then all the support we gave them. I'm appreciative of that. Okay, our public hearing is still open. Let me just see if there's any hands up for the public hearing. I'd actually ask if there's any last requests for the public hearing. If not, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant CD1.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Raymer, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Moriarty. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining? That carries 12-0-0, which brings us back to a vote on CD1 for the amended amount. I just think we ought to make sure we get it right. $386,590 for the appropriations. Further discussion? Okay, Mr. Drake, can you call a vote on this one for me?
Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Krumme,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkenton,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Vasiliotis,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you. At least I didn't forget to go back to it later on. Okay, that brings us to item number 5, the assessor's report. And I'm sure Ms. Vasiliotis is way ahead of me and we're just moving. There we go.
Ah,
Good evening.
good evening.
Hello there.
How are you all?
We're doing fantastic.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for December 2020. The January tax bills, which are the second half of the real estate and the supplemental motor vehicle, those tax bills were due to be sent out tomorrow. I'm assuming they may or may not, but if quality data due to the weather, hopefully we'll have them out by the weekend. Currently, the assessor's office is completing the grand list of 2020. We should be able to complete the grand list by January 15th. And so I'll be signing the grand list at the end of January, by January 30th, without any issue. Soon as we complete the grand list of 2020, we will start right away with the revaluation, which is now for October 1st, 2021. The vendors are all ready to go. We've executed new contracts. And as soon as I sign the grand list, and we shall start the 2021 revaluation. Does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
We can just raise hands if we do, please. I'm seeing, I see one hand, Ms. Moriarty.
If you had the date available, just as a public service, the challenges to the 20 grand list, there is usually a very quick turnaround on a date when the challenges need to be filed. Do you know what that date is?
Yes. So if I sign the grand list by the end of January, then the Board of Assessment Appeals applications to appeal your assessment are due by February 20th. Okay.
How is that date publicized?
The Board of Assessment Appeals is responsible for putting it out in legal notices. And I believe also we have it, when I send out the increased notices in January or any change notices, we put that information on the change notice. So if you've gotten a change in your assessment from the 2019 grand list to the 2020 grand list, there's the procedures are all spelled out on that letter, on that increased notice.
Thank you. I wanted to make one other comment if I could, because we typically talk about the graph that you show on page 5 of your report, which is page 143 of our packet tonight, that shows the trend in sales prices versus assessed value. And for a period of time, that trend was showing a line that had a pretty steep curve heading down towards 1.0, never got below 1.0, but that curve has flattened out, that we're seeing the prices show rebounding to be substantially above the assessed value.
Mr. Raymer, I see your hand.
Sorry, I was trying to get to the blue hand to put up too. Just because Mrs. Moriarty, I think misspoke, and I think it's important the public know that it wasn't trending down towards the assessed value. It was trending down towards the figure that the assessor has for the market value of the property, In this case, it's market value as of October 1, 2015. The assessed value is actually a number that's 70% of that. And there was some confusion on that point in a recent publication of the Budget Overview Committee from the RTM, and I thought that we should be careful that people begin to understand correctly what figures are and what the definitions are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Further questions for the assessor's report? Can I get a motion to accept the assessor's report for December 2020?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Crumick, I believe. All those in
I think that
favor?
was Raymer. for a
Okay.
second.
Either way.
Mr. Raymer, that's, all those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, abstaining? Thank you. Our next item is under new business, approval of the assessor's office fiscal 21-22 budget and operational plan. Would someone, let's see, I need somebody to move those two items for us?
So moved.
Point of order.
Yes.
I'm not sure this is substantive, but I believe in the motions that we had put the discussion item for the tax referral program next, and then the budget after that.
Yes, I don't have, the reason I did that, and I appreciate that, is I'm trying to find the tax collector on the,
She's not there.
yeah, that's, and I didn't want us spending time on that, so I hope you'll forgive me on that, but I don't see her, and we're trying to put in a call, but I'm hearing there might be some power outages in town now. I think Mr. Drake, his phone is gone, but he's working off of his other battery, right? Is that true, Mr. Drake?
Yeah, my cell is dead, but we got power here in Riverside.
Oh, okay, good. So something's out there, but
There were some telephone interruptions. I know my parents didn't have telephone for a while, so I don't know. I'm trying to get in touch with her though.
okay, so I just, if you'll,
Do we need a motion? I don't know how formal we want to be, but to defer that item until she's in attendance?
I'll accept that motion, seconded by Mr. Raymer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go. Thank you. I still need, let's see, I need a motion for approval of the assessor's office fiscal 21-22 budget and operational plan.
So moved. Is that coming out of the, this is a little bit different, but is this coming out of the budget committee? Because we reviewed it before the full BET.
This is an item before us, the full BET.
Right. And do we have a BET budget committee report too? I
Right,
just
so
want, whatever,
as
I'm
soon-
not quite, maybe we need to call Mr. Raymer because
As
this
soon
is,
as soon as the item is before us, I will take up any committee
Okay.
that took up the
Okay.
item, followed by general discussion and a vote on the item.
okay, great.
So the item has been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by
Me, I think.
Mr. Raymer. Okay. Okay, committee reports. Ms. Tarkington.
Okay, Ms. Elliott explained the sources of the assessor's office revenue and the inspection processes for achieving accurate valuation of building and renovation permits before issuing certificate of occupancies. She described how the updating of the QDS software facilitated efficiency between the assessor and the tax collector offices. The committee questioned the delay in filling the deputy assessor's position vacancy and encouraged Ms. Elliott to move forward on that particular position. The fiscal 21-22 budget is within BET guidelines. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the assessor's office fiscal year 21-22 budget, and that motion carried.
Thank you. Discussion on the item. I see no hands up. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the assessor's fiscal 21-22 budget and operational plan?
You already have that motion.
I had the motion, so
Can I-
is there any objection to the consent?
I think I'll call for a vote on this one, Mr. Drake.
Okay, Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crummey,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Bastiodis,
She's muted.
Jack, Mr. Raymer?
Oh, yes, sorry.
All good? Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Deuce?
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod?
Yes.
Ms. Erickson?
Yes.
That was unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we're still trying to get on, so let's continue with the comptroller's report, item number 6.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and other BET members. Controllers report. I'll have a few comments and then open it to questions. On page 1, it makes reference to the CAFR in the annual audit. Being that it's on the agenda later in the evening, I'll save my comments on this section till later. Still on page 1, we had our credit reviews this morning from 9 to about 12:30 with Moody's and S&P. It went smoothly. I don't anticipate any changes to the ratings. And we're all set to go for the borrowing on Tuesday on January 5th. And still on page 1, I'm happy to report that Sherry Davis, the new executive assistant to the controller, has hit the ground running, and she's moved right in and she's picking up with the assignment of the compiling the annual reports. I was going to make some comments on the tax deferral program. However, I just heard the conversation that you're going to open it up for an item, and I'll save any comments I have till later when you do address this. So at this point, any questions on the controller's report?
I don't see any hands up. I have an item that, Ms. Erickson, I'll go ahead. Your hand was up.
Oh, sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to
No, that's
interrupt
fine.
your
That's
flow. Pete, I just wanted to ask about the project with Tyler. It's a little disappointing to read that, we've had some turnover and there's been some stops and starts, and now that thus far the testing is not going as we would have hoped. Do you want to just make a couple comments on that, about where we're heading and how we're going to get that project moving forward?
Actually, I put this detailed timeline explanation in at the request of Leslie Moriarty at the last month's meeting. We, aside from the COVID, the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic impact during the summer, they had some serious cybersecurity breaches, and we really, it's detailed in these various bullets. We lost control of the project with them, and it's not to blame them. They had some serious issues that didn't impact our security. I think the question was opened last month. My project manager made a formal complaint to Tyler, and amazingly, the upper echelon of management in Tyler started calling us, and they actually wanted to come to the board and explain and give a reason for their delay. But we're back on track. And what's detailed in the comptroller's report is, aside from the cybersecurity delay and the COVID-19, we should be in the spring all set to turn it over in the late spring to the departments, and we should be finished.
Thank you, Pete. That last sentence on page 2 was just a little alarming. So I'm good to hear that we got their attention. Thank you.
Ms. Cruiser, your hand's up.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the bonding. Pete, you mentioned that in addition, the town will be refunding 10.7 million of outstanding 20-year-old sewer debt. I'm assuming that's just refinancing, and if so, what are we currently paying on that debt, just to get a sense of what our potential upside is?
I don't have it off the top of my head. When I get into the office tomorrow morning, I can give you there's three pieces. There's the sewer assessment piece, which is it's been refunded once. That was in the low 4s, refunded down to about 3.8 something. But I don't have them off the top of my head. And they're individual coupons that are being refinanced. So I could send it to the BET in the morning.
That would be great. But this is the refinancing that we sort of had out, and that the RTM approved that one day, we were going to keep an eye on it. This is what this is in reference to.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other members? Peter, I'll step in now. One of the things that we had been talking about from last term, and see if there's an update on this, and I understand the workload of today, but we had been talking about improving the closing out of capital projects, and some of the big expenditures. And there was actually a sample I think Ms. Moriarty created of a sort of a report, something for us to sort of keep a little bit of pulse on projects that are closed out, what was done, what the budget was, what it turned out to be, the spending. And it's a project that we may need a little help from Ben Brannion, the town administrator, but it's a project we've been kind of pushing. And as we're here tonight and we're talking about everything from debt policies to interim financing for interim appropriations and whatever, I just see it as even more of an initiative that we should try to move on with. And just sort of a comment. And I know what your schedule's been like for the last month, and I don't think we could find another 10 minutes in the last month, but it's been that busy. But something I think that's really important for us. It'd be a good tool for us to have an idea of sort of keeping an update on the projects.
It just, if I may respond real quickly,
Please.
Roland and I talked about this last week, and you're referring to the December of last year's, the BET approve a capital closeout form. We are going to restart that in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to, at the staff meeting, the first selectman staff meeting, where we have the attention of all the department heads like you have here, we're going to bring it to their attention, and we're restarting the project as far as the closeout forms. So we're going to be on top of it.
No, that sounds wonderful. Ms. Crumick's hand is up.
Yeah, this sort of dovetails with the whole discussion that we had when the consultant Bloom Shapiro focused on the Board of Education and the construction management issues and the need to understand where they were, how they were being assessed and closing them out. And I'm just wondering if there's a point at which that we could circle back to that and get an update on where we are, because some of those changes that they proposed were 6 months, some were a year, some were down the road. But I think as we continue to have major capital projects going forward, it would be helpful to know if we really have changed the process and where we are on that. And my guess is would apply not only to the Board of Ed, but to the town as well. And it sort of ties back to this question of closeout. Thank you.
Great. Yes.
No, thank you. Let's see. Ms. Hess's hands up.
Yeah, Beth, I completely agree with you. It would be nice to know, where the Board of Ed is in terms of some of those processes. I was actually, as part of this, I was going to say that they had already started some templates, and I think one of them had to do with capital project closeout. And so I was just going to suggest that anything that we're looking at doing on the town side, we can go and work with the Board of Ed and try to maybe come up with something that's consistent to the extent it makes sense to be consistent. And kind of share, best ideas with each other. So, but I think adding to that, the fact that it would be nice to know where they are with some of the enhancements they were making, that would be nice to know as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Peter? Can I get a motion to accept the comptroller's report for December?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to the treasurer's report. Can I get a motion to accept the treasurer's report for?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbrot, seconded by
Seconded.
Mr. Raymer. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay, would I be safe to say that vote is 11-0-1? Okay, thank you. Let me just give me 1 second.
While you're taking the second, I just checked on the internet. Apparently a large part of COSCOB Optimum is out of service. And that's the only thing I could surmise with Heather, because I've tried calling her house phone and it just keeps ringing. And then I tried calling her cell phone and there's no answer. So I'm assuming that she's incommunicado at this point.
I suspected that. So we can wait if we would like, but while we have Peter kind of hot on the spot, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to take up the item now, just the discussion, because I think from this board, there are the two things that we really need to focus on. We have the ability to have that discussion.
I'll second. Mr. Deuce seconded that. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Thank you. So this hit, I don't even know where to start with. This hit last night with a directive, and this morning, Ms. Vassilotis and Ms. Moriarty started with some emails and communications, and this directive is out from the governor's office. Ms. Vassilotis, you want to take us kind of what happened?
Last night, the governor extended the programs, either deferral or low interest programs, to allow taxpayers to either defer or pay a low interest rate for delinquent taxes through April 1st. I'm sorry. And the low interest would only go through March 1st. Towns that have already adopted programs need not take any action if they wish to just simply use the programs that they're on. It would just automatically grandfather into next year. If they want to change the programs, and again, you have to adopt either one or the other or both. Thank you, Jeff. I missed one word in that memo, which caused all kinds of havoc. And it wouldn't involve action by our board, it would involve action by the RTM. So if there's a wish to change the program, the RTM would have to act before December 31st. Tom Byrne has sent out an email to his district leaders to get the pulse of the RTM to see if they want to hold a special meeting to either change or ratify or do nothing. So we don't know the results of that. I did speak to Heather this morning and before the power outages happened, and she indicated that the tax bills are ready to go out, that no notification would go with them at this point, although she was check with her vendor to see if they could quickly add a piece of paper explaining that there is a deferment program. But she didn't think it was going to happen because they already had the bills printed and ready to go. So that would result in her having to send out either a separate notification or blast the media, again, depending on what the RTM decides, that there is a deferment through April 1st of taxes. She also indicated that she only had 3 inquiries to date from people asking whether or not there would be an extension. And this was before the executive order issued. What else can I tell you? I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but if I remember whatever, I'll let you guys know.
Thank you. Ms. Moriarty, I think, had a question that had come up this morning about, the RTM members might have a question to us on the cash implications. And I think I saw Peter was talking before about getting involved. So Ms. Moriarty and Peter, if you want to cover that so we can get our position known.
Yes, so the key information for me for the art that would be important for the RTM to know is whether the controller believes the town has the cash resources to extend the same program, which was the most generous program, I believe, the same program that we had offered for July 1st.
Yes, and in the email that Karen just referenced, Tom Byrne sent it to all the leaders of the RTM. He put a one-liner in there attributing a statement that I had made to Karen that there is no cash flow issues with this. There's less with this than there was with the previous one. what was demonstrated, and I give a lot of credit to Joan Lynch and Natasha Yemitz. They tracked it daily starting in July, and they went all the way through October. We were made whole 100%. The only impact was we didn't have use of the money for about 60 days. There's two things. The collection period for the in January is the second collection period. It's smaller than the first one. The first one's got the cars and the personal property in it. Number two, we are getting an infusion of $55 million in cash around the third week of January for the bands. And we've got permission from the bond council, if we ever had a shortage, to temporarily lend it to that. We don't need the 55 million. We don't need any money from the previous, the other funds other than a general fund. There's no issues that I see at all deferring this to April 1st. And that's been communicated to the RTM district leaders.
Okay, that's good. Again, Peter, I would say thank you for jumping on that. I know you had credit rating, but I think it was important because I think, you know, as I say, Karen and Leslie grabbed this bull by the horns, and I think it was good to get that information out there. So from our point of view, I think we just have to wait and see if the RTM does something. I don't think they can not do the deferment program. They still have the option. And my guess is
just to be clear, their options are do nothing, and the deferment program would go through to April 1st, or have a meeting, and they could ratify it if they so choose. I mean, they don't have to, or they can say, well, we don't like the deferment anymore. We want to do the low interest, or we want to do a combination of both.
Okay. Further discussion?
Mike?
Mr. Deuce.
Yeah, two questions, one for Karen, one for Peter. I assume Heather can't take any action with making a notice to taxpayers until the RTM acts. Is that fair to say?
Right. Well, Tom Byrne has asked for a response by the 21st, which is, I guess, Monday. So she should have some sort of indication by Monday or Tuesday, I would think. My suspicion is that they're going to do nothing. You know, I think that the moderator was a little upset at the late hour notice. You know, so I don't know, but I can't predict, but that's my suspicion.
And Peter, I know the notional deadline's at the end of the year, but the effective deadline is the end of January before we would start charging interest penalties. Is that correct?
It's actually February 1st.
Okay. What's been the experience years past in terms of receiving payments for this cycle of taxes? Do we get a slug at the end of January? Is that the usual pattern?
They typically come, yes, at the very end of January, and they'll take that grace period day of, and this year, February 1st falls on a Monday.
Yeah.
So you really, it's, again, I don't see any impact deferring it 8 weeks.
No, but I'm thinking of the need to get a notice out. So even if it can't do it before year end, it still makes great sense to get a notice out to taxpayers in early January, when we know exactly what the RTM is.
I wish Heather was here to respond, but I'll take a stab at it. It's my understanding that everybody is aware of their second payment for real estate, and it's my understanding that it's a reminder. The cars and the personal property went in the first billing in July.
No, I'm talking about the real estate taxes. So as long as people know before they would normally make their payment, which would be the end of January, that would be important to do.
I think to your point about she can't really say anything publicly until she knows what the RTM is going to do.
Yeah.
But what we can do is you could use the media. You could do through the radio, and you could do it through the Greenwich Time.
And I should also add that those individuals that pay their taxes through their mortgage companies or their, it's still due by the end of January. Yes. So they don't get a break on that because it's escrowed. And basically the idea is that you already saved the money, so you might as well use the money. And so anybody paying through mortgages or other types of loans, we'd still have the February 1 deadline.
Okay, there was some hands up. Did some people take their hands back down?
No, I put mine up. I
No.
think.
Okay, Ms. Tarkington, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, this is a much smaller group of taxpayers because for the reasons Karen and others have noted here. But has anyone checked with Heather whether she'll need any additional budget to fund any additional notice, or does she have sufficient since it's a relatively small group? Do we know?
No, that's one of the questions that was still open because again, she wasn't sure what the RTM was doing or anything else. And, she didn't want to delay getting out the tax bills because that's not good either. So I don't know the answer to that question, but that was one of the questions that she was asked.
Okay, Mr. Raymer.
There's one other latent issue back there that the RTM, I guess, could be deciding too, and that is that according to this executive order, and it tracks the language of the earlier executive order, the latitude, the town can grant the latitude to eligible taxpayers. What we did in the spring was we simply said that we extended it to all taxpayers. But I understand that some of the other municipalities haven't done that. The Office of Policy and Management apparently has issued guidance to the municipalities on how they can make a determination as to who's eligible and who's not. So I suppose one of the decisions that could be made by the RTM, if it wished to, would be to do differently than the spring and to, for the first time, not extend it to all taxpayers, but to go through the rigor of trying to make determination as to who the eligible taxpayers.
And that was explained to Tom as well. I mean, they had the option, for example, of just extending it to people who had their income drop by 20% or, some sort of factor. I think the last time around it was felt that there was a lot of verification that had to go on, and it would be probably not worth the time and the effort, but it is something that the RTM can consider.
Ms. Erickson.
Yes, thank you. I was just taking the time to review our minutes from April to make sure this was not an item that we voted on or expressed an opinion on. Though the minutes do reflect that we had some assurances from our controller about the cash flow. So just for clarity, because I don't want people who might be on the RTM, if they choose not to meet, if they choose to take no action, there will be a continuation of the program that they approved in the spring. Is that correct? So there is no, unless there wishes to be a change. I'm just cognizant that this is all happening very fast and we're
correct. And we're in the holiday season.
We're in the holiday season. So, and to echo Leslie's point, I don't know if we have an obligation to insert a notice or notify everyone via mail. That seems fairly costly. But I would hope that we would certainly broadcast this through other means.
Yeah, and that's what she did the last time. She had it on the website. She did a few media blasts. I think she was even on Facebook. I'm not even sure, but I seem to recall that. The reason the notice went out was because they had time to prepare. I mean, the RTM met and voted, and there was time to prepare to get them out with the tax bills. Obviously, that can't happen here. So, again, all options are on the table.
So Ms. Moriarty's hand is up. You're muted.
Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge, I know that the law department alerted us to it. We're kind of timing wise, this is very late and hard for the RTM to act on. It's kind of lucky that we have a BET meeting tonight so we can formally get the views of the controller on the town's ability to deal with the cash flow. But I want to thank Laura for highlighting this to Mike and me this morning, that this executive.
Well, it was actually Amina who first broke the news.
Amina gave it to Karen, but Laura gave it to me. So
no, it wasn't just me. It was to a few people, but Amina broke the news.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Hess.
Yeah, no, the only other thing I would say is that the first selectman does send out a weekly email, and I think he has a fairly large distribution list. So we can always consider using that district to notify people as well. Just an idea.
And
Thank you.
again, my memory's fuzzy, but I think that it was used the last time around too, so.
So I know we have, Ken is with us from the Greenwich Times. So it's clear that the governor enacted an extension of a policy. The town had a policy. The town has the option to just do nothing and let that policy go one more time for another tax billing, or the town could take and go the interest program. There was two options that we had. And his next point of reach out should be back with RTM leadership to see what their decision is. But either way, there will be one program or the other. So Ken, you can.
Just to correct the record, the RTM can either do nothing, adopt something different, which could be the deferral and or the low interest, or just the low interest going forward.
Okay. I'm just thinking, because this is obviously, this is obviously sort of 22-hour-old news. So, okay, thank you. Anything else on this subject?
Yeah, it's a possible segue. I should note that we were fortunate that we maintain a cash balance that we do. Other towns are not quite so fortunate. Last summer, a number of towns in Connecticut had to issue tax anticipation notes to cover the shortfall they incurred with the deferral.
No, I agree. I hear that. We're going to talk about that shortly too. Okay.
Just the last word. The ball is in the RTM's court.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue on with our next item. We've done treasurer standing committees. I obviously didn't have any. Let's see. Liaison reports. Mr. Weisbrod.
Well, I would just say that you, Mr. Chairman, and I visited at the Byram Fire Station with Al Manelli to get an update on the progress of the renovation project over there. It's a very fruitful meeting. I would say, generally speaking, the project is on target. There is a possibility, I don't know whether it's worth even mentioning, that there could be some small overage down the road, but that is not the case as of now. It was very impressive, the work they're doing. It was very satisfying and useful, and that's about it.
If I may add, I think there's a couple thoughts. There's some talk in the RTM about wanting some building committees in places that typically building committees are not called for in the charter. I think as our liaisons, as public safety, we've done this with other projects. We've had updates. And I thank Al Manelli for inviting David and I. And I thought it was a good usage of our time. David forgot to say that he didn't bring coffee. It was cold. It was damp. Forgot to say all that part. But no, it'll be very nice. I think David, they were talking about springtime occupancy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we'll probably have an opening, and we'll be invited to that. So thank you, Mr. Weisbrod. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Moving on. Special projects, nothing. Old business. 2021-22 BET fund balance policy biennial review and approval. Mr. Deuce.
Yeah, I'm on. Okay. In its most recent biennial reincarnation, the special project team for fund balance and debt policy met this past fall. Same team as 2 years previously. I was joined by my colleagues Bill Drake, Leslie Moriarty, and David Weisbert. We met about 7 or 8 times this past fall and came to agreement in early December. On fund balance policy, we made 2 major changes. The first was was to change the definition of fund balance from what is currently using GAAP for the general fund, plus the risk fund, plus the capital non-recurring fund. And we voted 4-0-0 to change that to a budgetary measure, a single measure with no addition from the risk fund or the capital non-recurring fund. Some background on that. when the fund balance policy was first devised about 11 years ago, as you saw in an earlier chart, the balance is much less. And we had to sort of follow a format that the agencies used back then, which was to follow gap basis measuring. And also, because our balance was low, we added the risk fund balance and the capital non-recurring balance, even though that's outside the general fund. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot more scrutiny of our fund balance by members of the public, including members of the RTM. And the thought was, we need to make this simpler. And we opted to choose a budgetary measure. It's a single number. It's easily found in the capper. It's a little bit higher than the gap measure, in part because it excludes encumbrances and the use of fund balance. That led to the next decision we made. It was because of the difference in the value of the numerator. Oh, by the way, I should mention that the denominator we kept as being the budget expenses. That didn't change. The effect is to increase the ratio by about 200 basis points. So we therefore decided and voted 400 to increase the range. The current range is 5 to 10%, and we voted to increase the range from 8 to 15. So the effect was a slight increase in lower bound. In other words, the break even would have been a 200 basis point increase. We increased it by 300 basis points because we felt the lower bound is a very critical measure to make sure we're always above that. The upper bound is a little bit less of a concern, in part because the risk is we're arguably taxing in advance of our needs. The current measure with a change would give us a balance of about 13%. So we opted to have the upper bound was slightly above that at 15%. As I said, both changes were approved by the committee 400. And I guess I should pause there for comments.
Discussion. I'll get the resolution obviously moved, but Mr. Raymer had his hand up.
Yeah, I was curious whether or not our consultant, Bill Lindsay, had commented on how that range compares to a lot of our peer AAA rated communities in Connecticut, if he did comment.
We had Bill visiting several of our meetings. He made lots of comments. He provided examples of what other peer communities do. In this sense, probably the closest was Norwalk, which has a range of 5 to 15. But generally, he said that the municipalities are becoming more conservative in how they're approaching fund balance. There's been a slight increase in these measures over the last few years, and that's with the support of the rating agencies. I don't think we've received any direct criticism for our low balance recently, or it's not low. It's much higher than it has been historically. And Bill was very supportive of that. I would also add that our controller, Pete Minarski, was also supportive of the change, in part because of its simplicity. Again, over the last couple of years, we've had lots of queries about how you calculate it, what goes in, how much. And here we can just point to a single number, year end, it's in the capper, and you go with that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? I see no, Miss Erickson's hands is up.
Well, I just want to say I wasn't able to attend every meeting, but the few meetings that I did attend, I was very impressed with the substance of the discussion and the real, really getting into the nitty gritty of the model. So I wanted to commend the members of the committee and Bill Lindsay, as well as Pete and Roland, for all the work, because I think this is a really fine product.
Thank you.
1 second. My mouse died for a second, sorry. Further discussion. Before I call for the motion, I'd like to make a comment. So our fund balance policy, I asked the question in caucus, what do we use fund balance for? The answer was, well, we have the tax deferment. Well, that's not using fund balance. That may be using it as a cash tool to cover us in the case of a deferment, but we're always going to get paid the taxes. So my question is, what do we use fund balance for? I can tell you I've served on this board with people that would be furious to know that we're now want to sit on up to 15% of the operating budget of taxpayer money. Some people would say that's not enough, make it 20%. And that's why we get paid so much to be in the middle and make the decisions for our community. But my question's not answered. What do you use fund balance for? So I go back to our conversation before, and you're probably going to hear me talk more about this in the debt. What do we use fund balance for? We're doing interim resolutions on borrowing. We have fund balance. When we first started fund balance, I recently was testifying in a case for the town, and that the examples were shown of the negative fund balance back in the year when we got the letter, and Peter Minarski sat down the leaders of the BET at that time and said, you need a fund balance and you need a policy because the credit rating agencies would like that. So we created one. The point I'm trying to make is, what do we use fund balance for? I'm not so sure if we're going to, anytime we get an interim, unless it's, catastrophic, we're now going to do borrowings on it. And that's not in our borrowing policy. That's not in our debt policy. So I encourage everyone, one of the reasons that we started building fund balance back at the time is because remediation hit. We knew it could be significant. We knew it would be in tranches over a period of time. And I'm only speaking for myself. One of the reasons that we started building fund balance was because we knew that the DEEP wasn't going to be nice enough to work into our budget process and allow us to, raise money and have cash to do the projects. So I just leave you with that thought. I'll support this policy, but it is something that we need to think about. I had conversations in the last month with some of you about the two interims that we've had, one for the bridge and one for tonight for the heaters. And I say to myself, where's the threshold when we use fund balance? The BET always has the ability in the future to raise tax levy to create fund balance. But I think it's time, and I think especially this group with all the qualifications and the expertise we have, I think these are the way we have. It's time for some changes in the way we think, and I think these are. I think my question is good, and I think we just have to come up for an answer tonight. No, but I think we have to start keeping this kind of conversations in mind. So that's just my sense, Mr. Drake.
I think your comments are very well taken, and we do have a policy question that you raised about what is our funding policy of interim appropriations. But I'd point out in the fund balance policy, this is part of our package here, we have a paragraph called uses of fund balance to answer the very question that you raised. And those words were carefully chosen and scrutinized and scrubbed. And so as we think that through, that would be a good place to start with the paragraph that's in front of you there called uses of fund balance.
Yeah.
Further discussion. Okay, so
I actually would like to weigh in,
Mr. Weisbrot.
Very briefly. This is one of the thorniest questions that faces us at the BET, the fund balance policy and the debt policy. And quite frankly, the ability of the BET to address this as well as it did in this last session is a testament, in my view, to the leadership of Andy Deuce and quite frankly, the collaboration between all people that were on this committee. Because the reason I even bother to say this is that the topic of fund balance and debt policy can be extremely controversial. And yet it was addressed in a extraordinarily professional and collaborative way. I would also say that the work of the RTM Finance Committee in a document that they produced in May of this year, talking about constraints on the capital process, is almost a companion piece to the work that ensued from Andy's committee. So what you have is both the Finance Committee of the RTM and the work of Andy's committee, and the extraordinary spreadsheet that was attached to it, or essentially attached to it, not formally so, but which we referred to extensively during the work, generated originally by Roland and then worked on by both Andy and Leslie Moriarty. This companion piece tied into the work of the Finance RTM really sets forth a set of challenges for the town as we look at the constraints, the legitimate fiscal constraints that we will be facing as we look at different capital projects this year and in the years to follow. So I don't think I can overstate how impressed I am by the work that was done this round and the importance of it and the ability, quite frankly, of this group to come to a meeting of the minds on something that can be quite difficult and challenging. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. Seeing no hands, I do need the draft fund balance policy moved and seconded. Mr. Deuce went right into committee. I do need a motion to formally put that up for a vote. Can I get that?
As a member of the committee, I'll move it.
Okay, thank you. And I have a seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Moriarty. Thank you. Seeing no hands, Mr. Drake, can we get a record vote on this?
Sure. So we're voting on the fund balance policy, which is in our package. Ms. Cruiser,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Ms. Crummey,
Yes.
Ms. Moriarty,
Yes.
Ms. Tarkington,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Ms. Pasiliotis,
Karen, you need to unmute yourself.
Ms. Pasiliotis will come back to you. Mr. Raymer,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Deuce,
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrod,
Yes.
Ms. Erickson,
Yes.
and back to Ms. Pasiliotis.
Yes.
Thanks. That was unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to the 2021-22 BET debt policy.
The debt policy. Sorry.
Let's do it. Let's do it the right way. Can I get a motion to put before us approval of the 2021-22 BET debt policy?
Yes, I'll move it again.
Seconded by Mr. Weisbrod. Committee report.
Okay, I'll give you the punchline first. The team voted 4-0-0 to recommend just minor changes in the language of the debt policy, but it recommended no substantive changes. But it took us a while to get there. Let me go back a little bit. Early on in the process, we invited David Panico to visit with us, or at least to communicate with us. He is the town's bond counsel. We were concerned about potentially funding debt service with the proceeds of borrowings. That would occur if our capital tax levy is insufficient to pay for the debt service. That in our model, that would occur in about 6 years and last with us for a period of years thereafter. It seems kind of innocuous, but you can't do that. The investors would lose their tax exemption, the federal tax exemption on buying those bonds. It has the municipal exemption is only for funding of capital projects. So that was something I don't think we really appreciated until this year. And David was very thorough with us. We asked Bill Lindsay, our financial advisor, what would happen if we had to finance some debt service with borrowing proceeds. And he said, well, you could do it. You have to do it with a taxable bond. And he would strongly recommend not doing that for optical reasons at the very least. Okay, so we had that new information in our back pocket. Then we went back and revisited Roland's model. And we looked at lots of different assumptions. We looked at our three, I guess we used to call them criteria. We call them now guidelines, the three target ratios. And we see how much stress those ratios would have going forward under different financing assumptions. You know, capital spending as proposed, certain rates of growth in the operating budget, certain rates of growth in the capital tax levy. And the three, we call them criteria now. And the first one is capital projects funded by taxes. It must be at least 10%. That was designed to give us some cushion to avoid this issue that David Panico had alerted us to. The second one is a debt limit as a percentage of grand list of 0.75% max. And the third was debt service as a percentage of budget, 11% max. So those last two are really just guidelines. They're policy guidelines. I mean, if we exceed them, no great shakes. We like to come within the guidelines, but it doesn't have the downside that would happen if we started paying for debt service with the proceeds of a borrowing. In all cases, we do see a lot of stress because we also went to Lauren to get her estimate for the growth of the grand list. And she assumed, I think it was about 0.75, about 0.5 in the non-reval years, and then
1.5 for reval.
For reval years. Anyway, it came out to a compounded average growth rate over 15 years of about 0.92. And that underscores why we're having some pressures in the future. Our wealth, as measured by our grand list, is growing at a rate below inflation. Yet our operating budget, particularly when you add on the impact of the capital tax levy, is growing at a rate above inflation. So, and we have a very ambitious schedule, at least in terms of our wish list in the middle years for capital spending. So we have issues, and we marked up the model. A subset of that will appear in the budget book, just like last year, where it showed some stress on these ratios. And I think the takeaway for people is that we need to be mindful that something will have to give, if not this year or next, but certainly in the very near future, we have to rethink of how we spend and how we fund. So that said, probably the most significant non-change in the debt policy was that we kept the language introduced 2 years ago with respect to making reference to the type of debt that we would do. We acknowledge the common practice of funding for 5-year term debt, but introduced 2 years ago was a reference that, well, we would consider debt as long as 20 years for the general fund projects. We chose, all 4 of us, to leave that in, although that's not been the practice, but you never know. It could be a major remediation project, maybe an acquisition opportunity. It's an option that we will certainly be mindful of. Does it change our day-to-day working of debt policy? Maybe not, but we opted to leave it in there because it could happen. It's just an option we have. We always have that option. Beyond that, I would also say we added some comments in our covering note to the BET on capital spending, and I think it's important for everyone to know who you look at the model and when they see it in the budget book. It's a plan. To a large extent, it's a wish list, particularly when you get beyond the next few years. And I can guarantee you it won't happen as it's shown on paper. It may be lower. But I could also say that in later years, it might be higher because invariably there are always some other projects that arise that are unforeseen and are ultimately deemed to be necessary. So this is not a science, it's modeling stuff. You just need to be mindful of where there's going to be some give and take going forward. That said, I think we're very pleased to have approved the debt policy that we have before us, and it gives us lots of flexibility going forward. Let me actually pause there and see if any of my other committee colleagues would like to add some further thoughts.
Ms. Moriarty has her hand up.
I just wanted to add, as we looked at the capital model, clearly it's spending higher than our current financing model can afford. And, as Andy said, there are 2 ways to deal with it. It's either change your capital projects, change your method of financing. And those are the tasks that our committee said is really the task of the budget committee as it reviews the annual budget, but also starts to pay a little bit of attention to the longer term capital plan that appears in the budget book. So this work isn't done. There are outstanding issues, and we'll have to continue to keep working on that as a BET.
Ms. Hess, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm consistent with how I voted on this 2 years ago. I don't like the language about considering the 20-year debt. This is a guideline, we always have the option to consider long-term debt. My preference would be to go back to the language as it was and not have this in there. Sure, we've said we'd consider it. There may be a large remediation, et cetera. So I'm not gonna say I won't consider it, but I don't, it's not the go-to. And because of that, I'm not comfortable with this debt policy as currently written. The other thing I would just add in terms of the projection, I think that it's unrealistic if you look at it. If realistically, in terms of some of these projects, especially the capital plan for the Board of Education, it will likely be spread over a longer period of time, which will take away pressure on our borrowing and the amount of our borrowing. So because of that, again, consistent with how I voted almost 2 years ago on this, I'm not supporting a debt policy that has language in it about 20-year financing.
Thank you, Mr. Drake.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, really, in one sentence, basically the same thing that Mr. Weisbrod said. I thought that this 4-person committee brought together a lot of good back and forth on a basis of respect and thoroughness and working in the best interest of the town. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was well done 2 years ago when Ms. Moriarty was the chairman. So it was a good piece of cooperative work. Recommended to all of you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Tarkington.
Yes, as you all know, many of you know, I'm a longtime supporter of the town's modified pay-as-you-go system of financing its projects. The town finance department funds projects by tranches. This results in a much longer term for projects than it would appear. And so both the financing and the debt service extend for a much longer term than what is described as the 7 years. For example, for MISA, it is currently 16 years. The town has not yet financed the final tranche of this. So that will extend that term, which I expect will be provide financing for MISA that will be well over or at least 20 years. For this reason, I cannot support it. And when that final tranche is completed, it's over 20 years. But if you were doing this with this 20-year program for exactly the same project, you'd be well over 30 years. And I think we need to think about how, the period it takes for us to do the projects, how we finance them. And, for these reasons and my continuing support for the modified pay-as-you-go system, I can't support what is being proposed at this time in this debt policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion before I call for the vote? Ms. Moriarty?
I just wanted to identify one implication of the comments that Ms. Tarkington just made. One of the key differences, and I'm not, we don't have, in our last budget, we didn't propose, no one proposed longer term financing in 5 years. This is a tool that we want to keep in a toolbox. But the key difference is when you use continual 5-year debt, you're paying the principal over 5 years. And it's really that principal payback over that short time that causes the pressure when you have a large amount of projects. So when we talk about larger, so the term of the debt is not just extending the period of time that we have it on their books, it's lowering the annual cost, and that's the benefit that you get. There are costs to doing that, clearly, and that's what we want to consider each year as we look at these projects. I'm not sure MISA is the typical project. The project got held up by a lot of reasons, nothing to do with the town's ability to execute it. But I just wanted to point out that the difference in principal payback has the most dramatic impact to the town.
Ms. Tarkington, do you have another?
I only wanted to make one comment about it. That's what Ms. Moriarty said, was there are some other aspects too, because longer term debt has higher interest costs. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that point also.
I see no other hands up, so I'd like to interject.
Mike, my hand was up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see the blue hand. Okay, Mr. Deuce.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank, I thank my committee colleagues very much so. I really appreciate their guidance. I also thank Pete and Roland. I mean, we are so lucky to have these two helping us, guiding us, correcting us when we go astray. I think they're the best team any municipality can possibly have. And I feel so secure when I go to sleep at night knowing that they're probably up working on our behalf. Thank you both.
Probably won't get much of an argument on that. So before I call for the vote, let me give a couple comments. So when we created a debt policy, it was because we had made a decision to embark on addressing infrastructure problems. It was said just recently, there's only really two ways to change your debt, either say no to the projects or change the way you finance them. That's what I think I heard just a minute ago. Well, I think I said it 10 years ago, and I'm reminded of it constantly. We sit here all the time, year after year, document after document, talking about running a more efficient government. If we run a more efficient government, okay, we then have funds that we could divert over to our capital model. We all just watched how many meetings department heads have to go to get their 4 bicycles. That was efficient. We all watch as we look at our operating budgets increasing way above CPI. Our fixed charges 5 times over CPI increases. And we have an appetite for capital. And as you see, some of the projects will be modified in cost as they really get to them, and then as they get to them into capacity. Our borrowing has worked. There are initiatives out there that might have some interest. As you've heard me say, there's some conversations about options in a pension plan that might create a different kind of financing, although we'll address that bridge when it comes. I have a very hard time, not only that, but I say this to all of us, maybe I'm just having more time to think about this stuff because I work with a lot of great professional people, but I look back at the debt policy and I look back to an election just not long ago. And all it was a conversation that ran through the town about who wants to borrow, what they want to spend. I want to do what's best for the town. I want to take care of the infrastructure of the town in the best manner. I want to prioritize. I don't want to change funding because I think that gets us more. I want to manage. We heard tonight another thing about capital project management. We have a lot of things that we can do that can create efficiencies that can open the door for more financing available for capital. So I don't know exactly how I'm voting on this item, but I think we're either way. I think the committee did a great job. I think we're in good shape. And I think it's just my continual push to we're in a rhythm and repeat mode in this town in so many ways, and it's time to look for ways to break out. Some people say to me, well, you have to have a plan to do it. Well, if what you're doing repeatedly is not making you satisfied, maybe we just need to start a little experimenting work in changing how we're managing this, because quite frankly, you just heard me say it with the debt policy. There will be people who will say, what do you want 15% of the operating budget in reserve? What do you need that amount for? I'm in favor of it, by the way, you saw my vote. But this is the point. So I try to set our visions and goals of where we're trying to go. And I think some of us are trying to be able to accomplish more capitals. And I commend you, capital projects. I commend you for that. But that's my opinion on how we should be handling this. And quite frankly, this document, and this is only a recent item that we now seem to be, I'm concerned about this authorizing borrowings in the middle of a year. And you hear, we're about to, imagine the average person hearing we still have borrowings to go out for MISA. I mean, I don't know how the average resident's gonna take that. So we'll call for the vote and we'll see how it goes. But everybody who put work into this, I am really appreciative of it. And you met the deadline, the deadline of having it done this month, which is even better. So, Mr. Drake.
Okay, I'm going to start at the other end of the table. Ms. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Weisbrot.
Yes.
Mr. Deuce.
Yes.
Mr. Raymer.
Yes.
Ms. Vasiliotis.
No, for the reasons stated by my colleagues.
I'm a yes. Mr. Mason.
I'll pass for the moment.
Ms. Tarkington.
I'm a no.
Ms. Moriarty.
Yes.
Ms. Crumick.
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
No.
Ms. Cruiser.
Yes.
So that is 8 yeses, 3 nos, and Mr. Mason.
1 abstention.
So that sounds like 8-3-1, right? Everybody? It passes.
Bill, who are the 3 no's? Just,
3 no's were Ms. Hess, Ms. Tarkington, and Ms. Fasliotis.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item number 12, we have, can I get a motion to approve the comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR, for 2020?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Erickson, seconded by
Mr. Weisbrod.
Mr. Weisbrod. Do we have a committee report on this?
Well, really, the audit committee passed, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the audit committee reviewed it with the help of the RSM auditors and Mr. Minarski. And at the time we reviewed it, which was just a handful of days ago, there were tiny corrections and modifications to be made, I think, to the wording, none of which were substantial and none of which affected the figures. So the audit committee approved it unanimously to submit it to the full RTO, BET.
Thank you. Discussion, Mr. Minarski, comments?
No, just the auditors presented to the audit committee. The only edits are grammatical. Nothing changes the bottom lines. They did some additional testing at Nathaniel Witherall with the help of Roland and Tom Marion, who from O'Connor Davies. But the CAFR is just about finished. We have to transmit it and file with the Office of Policy and Management by December 31st. And what you don't see on this agenda item is the single audit, which was discussed at the audit committee based on the revenues we received for the COVID-19. They came up, the Office of Policy and Management has new guidelines, auditing guidelines. So the RSM delayed the single audit. I got an extension from OPM till January 31st. So that's why the single audit is not on the agenda with the CAFR, which it had been for every year before.
Thank you. Further discussion? I have a question. Where's our letter from the Office of Policy and Management on the excellent work?
It was in the controller's report about 3 months ago.
No, but we're going to get a letter for this CAFR, aren't we?
Yeah, but the way it works is you have to file before December 31st, and you don't get the letter until like June or July.
Okay, just checking,
We got 59 in a row.
Really?
Yes.
But who's counting?
Who's counting?
Is it going to be at risk because we're 1 month, we've asked for the extension? Hope not.
No. We file the CAFR. The CAFR, it's called the Certificate of Conformance, that it's a model that everybody in Canada and North America follows. The single audit doesn't go to the GFOA, it goes to OPM.
Got it. Okay. Is there everybody's in favor of this item? Anybody against or abstaining? Would I be safe with a 12-0-0 vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Wonderful, wonderful. Which brings us to our next item. Can I get a motion for the approval of the Finance Department fiscal 21-22 budget and operational plan?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Moriarty. Ms. Tarkington, did you take this up in budget?
Yes, we did. And I should have a report here someplace. Controller Minarski remarked that the Finance Department's fiscal year 21-22 budget showed an increase of 1.9% over the previous year. There's no reduction in the full-time headcount was anticipated, and the special projects item has an unspent fiscal year 2021 remainder that is not yet earmarked. Other highlighted items included an increase in bank credit card processing costs, primarily due to building permit transactions and waste removal hauler tipping fees. Mr. Minarski proposed asking the Board of Selectmen to build in the credit card transaction fees in the future. The committee voted 4-0-0 to approve the Finance Department fiscal 21-22 budget and operations plan, and that motion carried.
Thank you. Discussion. So Peter, this budget leaves, the way the process works for everybody is this budget leaves you, goes to the town administrator to be put in a consolidated budget, correct?
Yes,
And then it comes back to the budget committee.
in February, yes.
So if they all vote for this budget right here and now, and the first selectman doesn't make any changes in it, you don't have to come that day for interviews on your budget?
Not works.
The question is, will I come physically or I'll be in a Zoom meeting?
Don't go anywhere. We're going to have that conversation very shortly. Okay, can I get a motion to, we have a motion. Can I get a call for the vote? Everybody in favor of the finance, it's our budget, finance department budget? For anybody against?
No.
Anybody abstaining? I'll call that 12-0-0. Zoom meetings. This is the item we voted to add to the agenda. Ms. Moriarty, Ms. Vassilotis, you want to?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the ability to hold Zoom meetings through March 31st of 2021.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Some discussion and a little bit of, Mr. Weisbrot had made the last motion on this that brought us through December. The question is that we're operating under the authority of a directive from the governor. I don't know what the expiration date is on that, but I'm sure we're okay either way. We can always rescind this. The next question I have is, I would like all of us to start thinking about our February budget meetings. As you see, the RTM is sort of, I don't know if I'm going to have the right term, a hybrid approach to their meeting where they're actually, some of their leadership is live in a meeting and then there's the call in and they're making it work. And I'm concerned with our February budget meetings. Our budget committee, they have a lot of schedule, and I'm wondering if we want to consider a hybrid meeting where we're spread out and there's a podium for departments to visit and have a conversation. It's still going to be on Zoom. It's still going to be taped and videoed. So I'm going to, I think Ms. Erickson and I, sort of in the IT, I think we're going to have a meeting with IT and Ben Brannion and talk about that, because it would certainly make those meetings go a lot better. You know, how many times are we going to say, somebody say, can you hear me? Am I on? You know, it's just, it takes time and energy and it kind of tires everybody out. So I do want to look into that, but this would extend us through our March cycle. So Ms. Tarkington?
Yeah, actually, I've been talking with Ben Brannion about this for quite a while. And that's one of the reasons also why we scheduled this series of meetings to alternate days so that they don't touch each other, so that there can be thorough cleaning of the town hall meeting room, if that's needed, and so forth and so on. So I think we all would welcome any assistance to make that work for all of us. I think it would be more productive for the budget process, for the BET, the budget committee, and the town departments too. So we're hoping that this vaccine is going to be rapidly, go through the ranks here, and that this will turn around and we'll be able to do it, at least at hybrid. That would be a great move in the right direction.
Okay. Mr. Drake had his hands up. I don't see it, Miss.
I raised it again. You're seeking for feedback. I just wanted to provide one person's feedback. My feedback would be, yes, it's worth trying in some well-managed way to do in-person meetings or hybrid in person. I'm in favor.
Right. Ms. Moriarty?
I do want this board, though, to be respectful of individual people's perspective on it and how whether people feel safe or not gathering before there is herd immunity or whatever the standard is that people feel comfortable with, because it may not jive with what others may feel is appropriate.
Oh, totally understand. Totally understand. Okay, so the motion is to extend our electronic meetings through March under the governor's order.
Can I just state for the record that the governor has extended the order to February 9th of 2021, but I expect that if COVID is still going on, it will be extended. So I don't think there's any issue with us extending it to March 31st.
Okay.
We can add-
Although,
We could add a condition.
okay, I guess my question would be if they don't extend that, then we are
We
not.
can- Right, well, we can then revisit it in February.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Nay?
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Abstaining? Okay, we're continuing on. I'm going to ask to take up item 14 instead of 13 first, our BT approval of our regular, our minutes. Mr. Drake?
We have two sets of minutes. The minutes in question are those that were emailed out today at about 11:43. Thanks everyone for your patience and better response. If the clerk appreciates it. If we have any technological challenges, we'll continue to iron them out. But thanks everybody for helping. Maybe I'll move the first set, the October set first, and we'll discuss those. Any comments? Edits?
Just a second.
I
Here,
do.
a second.
Ms. Moriarty?
So the October minutes, we didn't act on them last time because there was an issue with the motion regarding the police department grant. And I did forward suggested language to Mr. Drake that would resolve that. But I had also included a kind of a more accurate description of the conversation and the issue. I think the discussion that's in the current draft of minutes before us is still kind of weak. It doesn't really give the reader the understanding of the full grant that we got, and it's a 75% versus and 25% town funded grant. And so I think I have language that reflects that would be more accurate. I had sent that to Mr. Drake, and Mr. Geiger also reviewed it and has no problem with the revised language. I can share it on the screen if you want. It was also in what I think every member of the BET got my suggested changes, though not in a track changes version. But I would want to make a motion to amend to modify the discussion and motion of the police department grant.
That'd be fine. Why don't you give us your sentence? I think
Why
Roland's
don't you display it, Ms. Moriarty? You have co-host privilege.
Roland's point was and he can make his own point, but his point was that the appropriation is 146,982. But go ahead with your amendment.
So this shows in the first part what's currently in the minutes in front of you, which talks about the grant for 146,982. And the more expanded language talks about the regional port security grant for 181,789, of which 75% is from the federal government and 25% is to be funded locally. The police department, the local funds would be absorbed by the police department annual budget over the next 3 years of 38,061, plus 11,300 would be sourced from the federal asset forfeiture account. The description of the grant, and then it includes Mr. Mason's comment that it was reported, and then the last sentence, the total approval required is 145,982 funded from the port security, and 11,200 from the Fed. Actually, that should be a 300, not a 200, and that should have a dollar sign. But, and then we have the motion, which only approves the acceptance of the federal portion of the grants and the 11,000, and then the total amount of the project. I just think it's a more complete presentation of the grant, the sources of funds, and so that if we do need to refer to this discussion in the future, it will be much more helpful.
I, for one, think it's fine, but let's get the numbers right. It's 146,982.
Roland, you looked at it again just during this meeting. So if we can approve the language and we have Mr. Geiger confirm the numbers.
Roland, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. I thought I had the numbers added up properly, but
I think you did. Isn't it?
it was 146,982,
Right,
and it's 135,782 and 11,200.
right.
Did I catch? Okay, I can certainly, this has to get dropped into the minutes, but so the motion to amend is to include this description and motion for this budget, this agenda item.
And I'm personally good with that. The numbers are squared away.
Motion
I
by
think
Ms.
it's fine.
Meyer to amend, seconded by Mr. Drake.
Yep.
Okay. So the October 19th minutes as amended by the Moriarty motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Erickson, you had your hand. Oh,
I was just wanting to make sure that the minutes were in accordance with the budget committee discussion, that we had general agreement, but it's okay.
okay. Mr. Weisbrot, who's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my grandson who just walked in to the room and he wants to be part of the meeting.
We need more of that. We need more of that. Okay. Mr. Drake.
Grandson, yes. Bird, no.
Message taken. I got
Okay. So all those in favor of the October 19th as amended, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining?
That
Okay,
was,
Mr. Drake,
that
November
was
16th.
unanimous. We also have the November set, and the November set has a typo on page 4, which in the tax collector part, there's a sentence that says the tax collector, Ms. Meriglio, noted that 206 million of the 209 million check number total had been collected in October under the extension grant. And obviously those words check number don't belong in there, so we propose to remove them.
Mr. Raymer has his hand up.
Yeah, I had submitted some changes on this paragraph that I thought had been accommodated, but they didn't appear here. It corrects some errors and missing elements. It reflects the fact, not that the tax collector had requested a clarification of our policy, but rather that we were seeking that there be an established policy, and there was reference made to the audit committee. We also had asked that some process on enforcement be established with the collaboration of the town attorney, and I had proposed that that be in the minutes too, and none of that has appeared. I wonder if perhaps these minutes could be carried over to the next meeting, and I'll follow up with the town clerk with the BET clerk on some of these changes.
So I have a motion to postpone these minutes to our next meeting. I'll second that discussion.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever saw them. They certainly don't sound like the kind of things I would not put in, Mr. Raymer. So if you say you sent it to me, I guess I believe you. But had I seen them, I probably would have put them in there. There is reference to the collection enforcement program. Are you sure that if you're sure it's not in there, then we'll have a redo.
I'm pretty sure. But I'll get together with you, Bill, and we'll work this out.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to postpone those?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstaining? So, Mr. Weisbrod, I just want you to know that picture on the screen is what this is all about right here. So I have a chairman's report that I think that young lad needs to hear. So here's my chairman's, as we close 2020 calendar year, I'm sure it will be a year all of us will remember forever.
Yeah.
Hopefully the new year will bring us back to some normalcy and COVID will be a distant memory. So instead of my normal monthly reporting of the activities of what I do, and everybody here is doing more than I am, I thought it would be a little bit better to focus on some more important things as we leave 2020 for 2021. So I have the BET's holiday wish list. Everyone on the BET wants Greenwich to have the best roads, playing fields, parks, recreational facilities we all believe our residents deserve. We all want our schools to have everything they need to continue to educate and prepare our children for the future. We want replacement stadium, ice skating rink, ferry boat, civic center, keeping in mind all of our leisure activities. We want a downtown business district where our families and friends can enjoy dining, shopping, a place where people want to be. We want safe roads and bridges. And we need to replace dump trucks and fire trucks and iPads. We want to be able to do that. We want our entire team that makes this town run to be happy, healthy, and have a prosperous new year. And with that said, I thought, well, maybe we might not get everything on our list in the next year. So I take it back to the most important thing. And this goes to our team that works for us and all the town and everybody and all of our families. We need a happy, healthy, safe, and prosperous new year. That would be my first choice on the BET list if I had to prioritize. And if we're going to get the typical things in our stockings that some of us got, no more dirty soil, please. I'll take the coal and wood over some more dirty soil. So hopefully we'll resolve that in the next year. So to everybody, it's just, we're turning off the BET. It's holiday time and we'll be back after the new year. So happy holidays, everybody. Healthy, healthy, healthy.
Here,
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, Mike.
Here, here. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy
Yes.
holidays.
Can I get a motion?
So moved. Motion to
Before I
adjourn.
get that motion, Roland, how much snow did you get?
About 12, 14 inches. It wasn't but the 20 inches that they said.
Oh, all right.
And it was
all right.
nice and fluffy.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Everyone.
Happy holidays.